And Simka, if you can share your screen, we have just a few slides to show, and then I know we'll have some time at the end for questions for those of you who are here and know a little bit about local food for schools or the information we present on. Thanks, Simka. So welcome, everyone. You are here for Local Food for Schools, an opportunity for your farm. Like I said, Simka and I are the co-directors here at Mass Farm to School. We're excited to spend a few minutes talking about the Local Food for Schools program, which is new this year, and then also hopefully have time at the end for any questions. It's good if you just want to go next slide, please. And so for those of you who are not familiar with Mass Farm to School, we are a statewide organization here in Massachusetts working to strengthen local farms and fisheries and promote healthy communities by increasing local food purchasing and local food education at schools. We work around the state providing professional development opportunities, networking. We also work in policy and advocacy, mainly at the state level for farm to school programming. And then also run a number of programs surrounding communications and farm to school. One that's highlighted here on this slide, our Harvest of the Month program, which is one of our premier programs that many of you may know of already. So we're excited to talk a little bit about local food for schools, how our work intersects with this program and our partnership that we're currently excited about with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, who's administering the Local Food for Schools program. And I will turn it over to Simka. She can dive into the details. And as as Simka goes through her presentation, if you have a question, feel free to pop it into the chat. I'm happy to monitor that and interrupt Simka or save them all to the end, whatever makes most sense.
Oh, sorry about that. Let me go back to slideshow. Great. So thanks, Lisa. Just wanted to give folks a brief overview of what this opportunity is, and then we'll get into a little bit more details about kind of next steps and how to potentially get involved. But Local Food for Schools is a new USDA program. It's a one-time program that was created with some like in the COVID relief effort, and it provides funding to states to give to schools specifically for local foods purchasing in their school meals. So Massachusetts has received $3.5 million in this program. It's available, the money comes to our state Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, also referred to as DESE, and all Massachusetts districts are eligible to participate. So there are no sort of demographic or income requirements for participation, but schools do have to opt in to participate. And the DESE is going through a process of and this is imminent. We're hoping it would have been happened already, but I anticipate it happening within the next couple of weeks, that they are formalizing the announcement to schools and giving them the opportunity to say, yes, I want to participate, and also sort of indicate how much funding they would like. And then with that information, DESE will be determining how much schools get based on their interest and things like the district size and how much funding is available. So the funds can be used for unprocessed and lightly processed foods that are grown or raised within 400 miles. So it's not Massachusetts specific. This is a regional food definition of local food. There is also a preference, though not a requirement, for food produced by what USDA determines to be like socially disadvantaged farmers. And so it's not just for produce. It can be dairy, it can be seafood, other proteins, grains, etc. But again, grown within 400 miles and just lightly processed, not so it needs to be like one thing that came up was around some like a pizza product or something like that. It's not intended to be that, but like grain would be something that would be allowable. So as I said, schools are indicating how much funding they would like. DESE anticipates awarding up to $100,000 per school district. And in terms of the timeline, again, we hope schools they'll be doing this allocation process within the next couple of weeks. Their goal is really distributing funds to school. There's funds to schools in around March. It's, that timeline's a little bit fluid depending on kind of how fast the allocation process gets carried out. Right now, the end date, so when they expect schools to spend out the money, is June of 2024. And again, that's what was in their original proposal. And of course, timelines could slightly shift, but that's kind of how it's framed for right now. And the funds can be used both for purchases made during the school year and for schools that operate summer meal programs. They can also use the funding over the summer. For non-schools that operate meal programs, like in the summer, like a YMCA or a Boys and Girls Club, they are not eligible to participate. So this is really something that's restricted to school sponsors of both the school year lunch program and summer. And just wanted to share, a couple bits of tips for selling to schools, or why this might be something that you would consider if you haven't already sold to schools in the past. They can be really reliable wholesale customers. As we said, many of them both operate during the school year and in the summer. So we can help you identify if a particular district does run a summer meal program. And would just encourage setting up good customer communication with a school from the beginning. When you are establishing these relationships, really knowing what requirements you have to make it worthwhile for you. So what are sort of minimum sales requirements, and what are you really looking for in a school customer? Knowing what your delivery capacity is and the logistical constraints that you might have, and really figuring out the same on the school side. So if there's particular times that they need deliveries, days of the week, locations, etc. And good to remember that schools often do their planning well in advance. So some schools may not really be able to handle like a last minute, I have a bumper crop of X, because they have planned menus well in advance. Some are more adaptable to that kind of last minute thing, but because they do a lot of advanced planning, it also is an opportunity to potentially do some planning in partnership with a farm to help you anticipate what they might really be looking for, which crops and volumes, etc. So in addition to the schools getting this money that, and I should be clear, this is like bonus money on top of their regular school budgets. So this is all supplemental to what they typically have to spend on food. We are going to be providing support both to schools to help them figure out what is the best way to spend these funds and really establish relationships and new supply chains that we hope can continue beyond the period of the grant. We want to leverage this funding opportunity for really making long-term change in terms of how schools are sourcing food. But we are also providing a lot of direct support to farms. So we can connect you to schools that are participating, letting you know which schools have opted in, how much money they have available. really providing individualized assistance for you in terms of how you can identify appropriate schools to reach out to, ways to do that, preparing for those sort of initial conversations. And then some schools may be, particularly those who are doing larger volumes of purchasing, that will trigger some of the either state or federal procurement regulations that they have to follow. They may be issuing a request for quotes or issuing a request for proposals to ensure that they comply with those procurement regulations and can purchase at high levels. So this is for any institution that might be purchasing over $10,000 over the course of a school year. So if it's under that amount, it's not going to trigger that procurement regulation. So if a school has put out something like a request for quotes, that's also something where we can help any farm put together like their response to that RFP or to that request for quotes. And then just being available for other questions that come up. You know, we can't anticipate all the sorts of support farms and other vendors might want, but encourage you to just reach out if you've got questions. And just in terms of immediate next steps, this is a program that's also rolling out with great involvement from the Department of Agricultural Resources, who is looking to put together a directory of farms that are interested in school sales. So that's something to just keep an eye out for, an inquiry from MDAR about whether you'd be interested in being listed in that kind of directory, which is something that we could then make available to schools. If you have existing school customers, we really encourage you to reach out to them to ensure that they decide to opt into this program. Again, they may or may not know about it yet because although DETHI has mentioned it, the sort of official memo and opt-in form has not yet been circulated. But again, if you've got school customers, just have them keep an eye out for the local food for schools funding opportunity and opt in at, you know, whatever is like the highest value they feel like they can participate at. And as I said, just reach out to us for any other kind of support that we might be able to provide in helping you navigate this opportunity. I want to mention just one other little opportunity that is available right now. This is a grant program that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed is operating, a new farm to school grant program called the Fresh Grant. This is not something farms can apply to, but it is something for schools. And the grant opportunity is open right now and providing grants of up to $50,000 for schools and also early education centers. And this can fund like a really wide range of activities, including things that may support a partnership you could have with the farm. So for example, it could support farm field trips, or it could support a school in buying new kitchen equipment that they might be better able to process whole local food. So again, if you have any existing school relationships, this is something just in conversations with schools to make sure they are aware of, and there's still time to apply. The applications are due January 31st. So another great public funding opportunity to really support farm to school program expansion. And this is our contact info. Again, really encourage you to reach out directly with any questions, but we wanted to keep the sort of presentation about the program short so that we could have time for Q&A and really hear your thoughts and questions that may be coming up about this opportunity. So I'm going to turn my screen share off and open it up for questions.
And Margaret asked a question in the chat while you were presenting about the deadline for schools. I think I'm interpreting this correctly, Margaret. The deadline for schools to opt in. And although, like Simca said, DESE, Department of Ed, has not released this opportunity officially to schools yet, so it could change as that timing of that rollout. But I think it would probably be an early to mid-February deadline for them to opt in. So they would like to know relatively quickly what funds schools want, so then they can allocate appropriately depending on how many schools, with all that formula. I'm not sure if schools choose not to or don't opt in now, but then later on they go back and say, hey, like in May, hey, I changed my mind, I want some. And if there's funding left, I don't know that answer. There could be some opportunities if there's funding, but it would be a pretty quick deadline for opt-in in this official round.
And we will definitely, we can let folks know when DESE has released that memo to schools, so that it's like particularly good timing. If you have existing school customers, say like, hey, you should have gotten this, please opt in. So as soon as we hear that it's gone out, and we have seen drafts, so it's definitely close to going out the door, but hasn't been released yet.
Yeah. So Lisa asked, how do we connect with specific Boston public schools? Is it a particular school? Is it the district, or or is it the school system? And for that, Lisa, for Boston public schools, it would be the district. So the funds are distributed by district.
And I don't know if there's just sort of a more general question also about whether schools do purchasing based on the school or at the district level. And typically there is an individual, often called like a food service director or a school nutrition director, who's the one overseeing meal programs for a whole district. And that would be kind of the appropriate person to be reaching out to, even if individual cafeteria managers may have some discretion about ordering. Usually there's some level of centralized planning. And then in some school districts, there also are often charter schools that may have their own meal program not tied into the regular public school district. So they may be, particularly if you're really small farm in a big city, that there could be other opportunities like an individual charter school that runs its own meal program. And those are the sorts of things that we can help folks figure out. If you're like, this is who I am, this is where I'm located, this is the kind of product I have, where would be a great place to start? We can be trying to provide some of those introductions. And I think also just good to remember that even big districts are not necessarily looking to have one farm supply all of their potatoes or whatever it might be. If they haven't yet been buying that item locally, they presumably have additional suppliers they're already working with, and it may be something where they are using a local supplier for some of it, but not for providing 55,000 meals in one day. And question about whether it's suitable for new farms. Yeah, I think, again, it really depends on sort of scale and how there are some farms that might be starting out that have wholesale sales as their business model, and schools could be a good starting point for that. So that's the type of thing we would, I think, it's hard to make a general statement about appropriateness, but we could help you evaluate whether for your unique situation, if it feels like the right fit. Did folks hear the response about Boston? Okay, or just generally about schools may not be looking to buy all of a particular product from one producer. So there are still opportunities, even if you are a small farm. And even in a big district, there could be small opportunities, like, for example, a charter school that does its own meal program outside of the regular public school district. So And Lisa, happy to follow up with more details individually as well.
Hi, Simca, could you speak for a minute about the requirements for food safety for the schools? Is there a certain level of insurance that you have to carry to sell to any school? Do you have to be GAP or Commonwealth quality? What exactly is the requirement to work with the different school systems?
Yeah, so USDA has not put any requirements on vendors selling in this program or just generally to school meal programs in terms of insurance or food safety certification. Individual school districts may have their own requirements that they have put in place. And we tend to see that a little bit more often in districts that are contracting with another company like a Sodexo or Aramark to run their food service operation, because those companies might have their own insurance liability or food safety requirements. We are often seeing that schools that do have some sort of food safety requirement are allowing Commonwealth quality as like a certification that meets their food safety expectations. But again, it does differ a little bit district to district. I mean, Joe, you probably have have more knowledge of this than I do in terms of what you've faced with different districts. But that would be the type of question in approaching a new customer to find out, like, do you have any requirements around food safety certification or insurance? Because you don't want to get really far down the road of like planning sales with someone and then to find out that it's just not going to make sense for you because you either don't have a certification or it's not worth getting.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I did this a fair amount in Connecticut, and I found it was most effective with food services directors who were very interested in the program. And in Connecticut, we did a fair amount of formalized introduction experiences with those sorts of directors. Is there going to be any opportunity for those sorts of people to make themselves known to us, the farmers?
Like in an in-person sort of meet and greet kind of setting?
Yeah, or any way for us to be able to figure out who those people are. Because I mean, I can go to my town and, you know, my experience, they'll be like, okay, we could try it. And then you're like, okay, here's your cucumbers. And they're like, what am I gonna do with these? You know, like once it gets, so yeah, like, how do we make those connections with people who are actually wanting to do this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and I think it's also something we're really open to hearing what people are interested in. So if there was like a lot of excitement around a meet and greet, that is the type of thing we could try and organize. I think one thing we found in the past that's sometimes challenging is like, you know, if you have folks coming from a large geographic area to meet with farmers, they may be like, oh, your product looks great, but it's like a delivery that just doesn't make sense for you because it's too far away. Or so sometimes having some challenges with those kind of like in-person networking that's for too large of a geographic area, but something we could certainly pursue if there was interest. But I would say that's kind of like the role that Mass Farm to School is looking to play in terms of matchmaking. So to hear a farm say, yep, I'm really interested in this. These are the products I grow. This is sort of the region I'm interested in, that we can then say, great, here in your region are some districts we'd encourage you to reach out to because they've expressed they've opted in, for example, and we know they have this much money they're looking to spend, or they're excited and have a history of doing it. So we can definitely help facilitate those relationships so that you're not having to make like a lot of cold calls into places that may or may not really be interested. But one of the things that's kind of exciting about this program is that we really hope that it helps remove some of the risk for some districts in thinking about doing local purchases, because again, it's sort of, because it's supplemental funds, that it's really something we hope incentivizes new people to try this, even if they don't have a lot of experience with it, because they have the funds to do so.
Okay, so contact, yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily saying I want to do a special meeting, 'cause who has time for that? But yeah, contact you guys. Fundamental, it's like what it comes down to.
That is a good first step, I would say. Yeah, and I mean, we can also put out there, like, you know, once DESE has made the allocations, like schools have opted in and they've made allocations, we can put together a list of like, these are all the participating districts. So at minimum, there's an easy way for you to see, oh, great, I know the school has like extra money for this and has like made a commitment to participating. So at least narrows it down in that way.
Mhm.
I wish we already had that information for you, but hopefully soon.
And there's a question in the chat about information to be able to offer to school districts to better advertise and promote the programs. Just not sure if the local schools know about it or not, and just want to be able to offer opportunities. So we don't, I'm trying to think, we had a little pamphlet geared towards farmers about the program that we were working with MTAR to distribute. I know that Department of Ed is hoping to do outreach, like Simca said, very soon, and has done a little bit of outreach already about the program, introducing it to schools. So I can put some information maybe in the follow-up email to the links to the USDA program. I'll try to search around and see if there's something. So if you're approaching a school district, you want to have something in hand to say, hey, this is what I'm talking about. I can try to include something in the follow-up email to help you do that in the meantime, before maybe Department of Ed has a chance to reach out.
Ella, did you have a question?
Yes. So in our farm to school program, I work for an outside organization that works with the school who is an existing customer. We're already ordering from farms, especially through the MDAR grant that we were awarded to purchase that. So for this situation, would our school just have to opt in when they receive this documentation, or would there be something extra that we could do to support, get some more funding for the school to buy from our farmers?
If I understand the question, all they would have to do is opt in, and then they get to decide how to allocate those funds. So the opportunity will be made available to them. They indicate if they want to participate, and then we'll also, they're asked like at what level, like how much money would they like. So that's the piece they have to do. DESE will then come back to them and say like, great, based on available funds, like this is how much you're getting. And then the school does their regular purchasing practices to use that money. Did that answer your question?
I think so. I just don't think that the farmers that we're ordering from are part of her regular ordering process. We've received outside money, so therefore we as an organization are ordering the produce and delivering it supplementally to the school.
Got it. So the school would need to do the ordering in this case.
And maybe we could advise her that this
Yeah.
is coming and help in that way. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Is there anyone else who maybe is a producer who likes the idea of some sort of like in-person meet and greet kind of thing with school districts? Or again, that's like something we could explore if there was demand for it.
I have the meet and greet. I like that.
You do like that idea? Sorry, you cut out a little bit. That was a yes. Okay.
Yes, I like that.
And a question about priority for different products. So no, there's, eligible products are just unprocessed or lightly processed, but there's no specific thing it has to be. There are, and this is sort of information we can share about kind of really commonly purchased produce items by schools. And again, not just produce, but to give some like historic sort of purchasing information. Schools also they operate with pretty strict nutrition guidelines that influence some of what they're purchasing. Because, for example, they have to serve each week a certain amount of like dark green leafy vegetables. So they're interested in dark green leafy things. Or they have to serve a certain amount of vegetables that are classified as like red or orange. So there's often like carrot and sweet potato and butternut squash interest because that helps meet those nutrition guidelines. So those are the sorts of things that, again, if people have specific questions around like how their farm might be able to sell to schools, we could talk in more detail about like what types of crops that you already grow might be a good fit for a school customer.
Hi, this is Susan. So a couple points. I think as a farmer, I think, oh shoot, how do I get my local school involved in such a short amount of time? Is there something that we can, besides just pushing them to your website, is there some information that we could give them that might help them change their minds, or get them to want to do this? And then two, so there's like one, like, how do I get my local schools involved? And two, okay, so it doesn't have, I could actually sell to any school in Massachusetts, barring transportation issues. So, relatively close. So are you going to put out a list of schools, not just schools, but also organizations that are acting as food hubs and schools that are doing it? And I guess they're like three parts. Also, like, what schools can even cook? A lot of my local schools don't actually have kitchens, and they're just bringing stuff in and heating it. So I don't even know, could be a moot point unless it's, I don't sell apples or things that are just like ready. I'm a vegetable and egg farm.
Right. Okay, so a couple of questions there. One, about food hubs. Yes, we can definitely share some information about food hubs that are hoping to be a big part of this program, because I do think that the reality is that for a lot of schools that are dealing with the complexity of purchasing food for their meal programs, it's really attractive if they can have a vendor that's aggregating from a number of farms. So I think there definitely is a role for food hubs or for aggregators, and we can certainly share contact info for some of those food hubs, because they may be looking to expand either the number of farms they're working with or the number, the crops that they're offering to best meet schools that have these additional funds. And those tend to be operating a little bit more regionally. So, a food hub that's serving more kind of like the North Shore of Massachusetts. And so that might be a good fit for certain farms, but not for other ones. So we can share more information about that in follow-up. And to your question about whether schools have the capacity to like actually work to cook at all, I wish there was an easy answer to that. It's so variable, district by district, school by school. So there are some that have really great kitchens, some that have minimal kitchen, some that have no kitchen. So that is the type of thing that, again, like in trying to provide more individualized assistance, we can help you think through like which schools are you interested in, and in the cases where we may know, say, yeah, that could be a great fit because we know they do a lot of scratch cooking, and so your products would fit, or just kind of try and gather some of that information on your behalf to, again, make it easier to approach schools that might be a better fit. Was there a third? I feel like there was a third question. I don't.
Something about similar to a question in the chat about as opposed to just having our website,
Right.
getting schools excited about this opportunity.
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds like one thing that might be helpful as a next step that we could do is even just making like a one-page flyer that's like local food for schools, opt-in, that like takes them to whatever part of the DESE website they need to go to fill out their opt-in form or something like that, so that you have that to share in case a food service director or someone in the school district who's making these decisions like hasn't seen the email from DESE or just is not familiar with it. So I think that's something, it's not something we currently have, but I think we could certainly make in a fairly quick turnaround.
And some good question just came in. Is it available to both public and private schools? And this program is available to schools that are participating in the National School Lunch Program. So it would, if they're participating in the National School Lunch Program. So I think primarily that is categorized as public schools, although there are some, maybe a residential school or some smaller independent schools that participate in the National School Lunch Program that I believe, Simca, correct me if I'm wrong, would also be eligible to participate in this.
Yeah, there are a small number of residential independent schools that participate in the National School Lunch Program that would be eligible. Again, once we know who's choosing to opt in, that's the sort of thing we could share.
Can I make a comment that would be helpful as a farmer? I'd love a nice meet and greet, but as Carrie said, who has time for that? So I think what would be helpful for me is if I knew which school districts were opting in, who's the contact person and their contact information. And then like Susan was saying, are they a type of, do they have schools that just want ready to eat products, or or is it school districts that actually can prep and cook food? So I won't bother with those that, can't be doing the cooking and prepping. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just selfish me is thinking how you can make it nice and easy for me.
And I would say that the first two of like who's opting in, we can, and then also letting you know if they, one criteria that sometimes affects the ease with which they purchase is whether they run their own food service, they're what's called self-operating, like they run their own food service department, or they've contracted with an outside company to run the food service. Like those things will be really easy to like identify. We could have sort of like a spreadsheet and provide some contact information. The piece around the kitchen equipment is harder to know for, we don't have that data on the 400 districts in the state. One of the things that the sort of opt-in form asks for school districts is the extent to which they're currently doing scratch cooking, some scratch cooking, or receive, or I don't know, no scratch cooking. I forget the exact categories, but I'm hopeful that some of that data we may have access to that could help inform. So if they indicate like they're already doing a lot of scratch cooking, that's something that'll be able to say like, great, this is a district that's like well positioned. Cool. Any other questions?
When is MDR going to be asking if we want to opt into their directory?
Good question. So I should say we've just had a couple conversations with the Department of Ag Resources about this, and they're have been really cooperative and great partnerships to us and Department of Ed as they're rolling that out. And I think it's something they're exploring to see if and how they can host something like that. It's something they're interested in doing, but I think they're just at this point just figuring out how they would do it, if it's feasible and in what form. So I think stay tuned on that. That's something I know that if they do go forward with, that they'll push it out, and we'll also spread it around as well.
The schools that or districts that opt in and get the money, they must, I'm guessing they're going to be given a list of like from the MDR list.
Well,
these farmers, or
so I
how are
think
they going to reach out to people or farmers?
yeah, so that's that is the $3.5 million question, Laura, which we're so that's exactly what a Mass Farm to School is hoping to try to bridge that gap. And so MDR is really excited to explore this, to be able to say, here's a list, although not comprehensive, an extensive list of producers that are excited to work with schools, knowing that there will never be a complete list, that farmers will be too busy to answer that form, and that's okay. And so I think that's some of our role, is to help say, here's this list from MDR there. That's a great place. We also know the buy locals are a great resource. Let's reach out to them. If you're struggling with finding a right product mix or a specific producer. So we have not talked exactly about how we're delivering that information in general to schools and what that will look like. We hope to provide many resources for schools to then be able to figure out what the best relationship and farms to work with.
I also just dropped in the chat one resource we do have that's already exists. It's something that certainly needs some updating, but this is a map of that we have on our website of farms that have expressed interest in selling to schools in the past. And I would just encourage folks, if you're not listed on there and you would like to be, you can click like list my business, and there's a little form to fill out. So that's something that we already kind of direct people to, and we'll continue doing in the interim, but also think there will be value in having like a new and updated directory as well. Great. Well, I know there's still a lot of unknowns here, and we really just want to encourage folks to keep the communication open. We want to be a resource for you to help make this as successful as possible, and really to have some long-term impact for how schools purchase food, for sales opportunities going forward for your farms. So encourage you to be in touch with other questions, and we will be following up as we get any additional information from DESE about participating schools, and really like the idea of a sort of promo flyer that you can share with schools in your community. So that's something we can work on as well. So unless there's any last questions, thanks so much everyone for joining us today, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.